Good morning, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another What You Aren't Being Told by the Mainstream Media. Happy Election Day. Make sure you get out and vote. I wanted to make sure that you like and share the page, and you can find us in the description box below on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, website, all of our social media feeds. Wanted to come to you today and kind of highlight something that was brought to the attention of the social media and conservatives yesterday by Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney. He came out yesterday morning and basically said that what is being released tonight in polling is going to manipulate the system, manipulate the votes at the transfer points. I'll get into what he said later, but I think it's important first to talk about what he alluded to and referenced, which was called Scorecard and the hammer. So the scorecard is what they use to manipulate the votes, and he said it was tried during the or implemented in an act and put into practice in the 2020 primaries between Biden and Bernie Sanders. What they did was they implement the system, and when the votes transfer, meaning after the votes are all taken, then when they're submitted to the system and transferred to the databases, that it picks off approximately up to 3% of all the votes and shifts them to the candidate in which they desire. This was also discussed, not necessarily in frame of being the scorecard, but in 2012 election, if you remember, there was a gentleman who was a tech guy or whatever, had worked on and developed technology for voting machines in Ohio, and he showed how easily it is to manipulate the vote and transfer those votes. So according to McInerney, the Obama administration and voting apparatus that they controlled use it in 2012 to win Florida. He can't go into too much on that they tried it in 2016, but he said, I know that they tried to implement it, and for whatever reason, it didn't work. It didn't take. I don't know if the systems were corrupted or whatever happened, but it didn't happen, didn't take. But he's worried that it's going to take place today in Florida, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Texas, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada. Now, we know those are all key battleground states. The overwhelming support, it looks like, if you saw over the weekend, a lot of the caravans and rallies, even that Trump wasn't actually at, but if you look at Eric Trump's rallies, Donald Trump Jr.'s rallies, Ivanka's rallies, Rick Grenell's rallies, all of them have vastly more people than Biden can get to one of his. So the enthusiasm and momentum is moving rapidly and vivaciously towards Donald Trump. So if the votes are so overwhelming, then that's how you get around this vote stealing. And what's interesting about the vote stealing is if this is enacted and it's put into place, the media has already done the cover for the stealing of the election, right? They've already said, and they've tried to get Trump to go on record again. And this is what they tried to do in 2016. If you remember, the media kept asking Donald Trump and his surrogates, will you accept the results of the election if you in fact lose? And of course, he was forced to say in 2016, well, of course I will, right? So they already knew what they were trying to do in 2016. It did not work. If it works today, the media's already got their wrap-up smear. They've already said that Donald Trump's not going to go easily into the night, and he's going to contest the results and all this other stuff. So they've already painted him as being someone who isn't going to take the results. Now, if you know that the results they're going to try to obviously forecast the outcome. Axios actually wrote an article this morning saying that if the math looks like Biden is going to win and can be declared the winner at midnight, he's going to actually come out and give a speech and a commencement speech, a celebratory speech. But Trump's not allowed to, right? If you remember, Clinton just about 2 months ago maybe said under no circumstance should Biden accept the results of the election if he is indeed the loser at midnight. So you've seen all of the dots put in place, all the pieces of the puzzle out there. So now if you just start connecting the dots and you look at all of the chaos that they've tried to do with getting the courts into their favor to allow things to go 3, 6, 9 days beyond today to be able to count votes, you see where it's all going. So the Trump voters are going to have to get out in such mass form that there's just no way that you can steal an election. And so it'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out. However, moving into kind of where we are now, Thomas McInerney, Lieutenant General McInerney, is a 35-year Air Force veteran. He was third in command at the Air Force, the commander of the raid on Tripoli. He commandered or commandeered NORAD in Alaska, which oversaw the Far East and Russia as far as intelligence gathering. He's in the cloud business now, so he knows. He's in the loop, still maintains top-level security clearance, and he's sounding the alarm. And he's the one that, and I'll post a podcast that he was on yesterday. He was on Steve Bannon's War Room also. So he was out yesterday morning in force getting this out there. You can listen and make your own decisions for yourself. There's an article that I will link in the description box below as well. I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can, just for purposes of knowing that we may run long and I've got other things to cover. But it's very critical. I didn't want to do this on camera because I'm going to be looking off and looking at my notes a lot and flipping pages. So bear with me if you can. But this is highly important for us. If this is implemented, we are going to witness the stealing of a U.S. election, and the media is complicit in it. The deep state is complicit in it. The DNC is complicit in it. Obviously, the Biden campaign is complicit in it. So where we start off is in 2000 after 9/11 in 2011 or in 2001, a program called The Hammer was developed and designed by a gentleman named Dennis Montgomery. It was created to spy on terrorists abroad in intel gathering and that type of thing, and it was never meant to be used here in the U.S. The safeguards were put into place that allow for the identification of anyone who is logging into the system and when they log out, including up to the President of the United States. So the President, if he logs into it, it's documented, it's shown that that person accessed the system. Now, Montgomery wrote this and got it approved because he wanted to safeguard U.S. citizens' Fourth Amendment right protections. In February of 2009, it was commandeered and repurposed by Obama, Brennan, and Clapper for use on U.S. citizens. I'll get to in a minute kind of who transferred or re-engineered it and got it back up and running prior to Obama being elected. But like I said, Dennis Montgomery was the developer and designer of this. He's also very well known for designing our surveillance technology for analyzing our drone footage to determine who is a spy, who is a terrorist, who is an American citizen through face recognition and everything else. So a brilliant man. And even General McInerney says he's a patriot. He loves America, and he's a genius. So what had happened was in 2006, Robert Mueller, had Montgomery's office and premises raided, and a U.S. magistrate, U.S. Official, ruled that the search warrants that Mueller used were illegally obtained. So he was admonished, the FBI was admonished by this magistrate. In 2009, so fast forward, through the intel community, leaks were set out to the mainstream media and just their media goons to start doing a smear campaign and labeling him as a hoax and someone that can be discredited. Playboy magazine, Wired magazine, and the New York Times did this hit job for the deep state. The guy that did the job for the New York Times is a guy named James Risen, who later became famous in 2014 for being a reporter, a journalist who was targeted by the Obama administration. And he wrote a piece in HuffPo in 2014 that said that the greatest threat to free speech in America was Obama. So they used him, got what they needed out of him, and then turned against him. I'm not clearly sure why they turned against him, but they turned against him. And so he came out and basically chastised and in vitriolic words, claimed that Obama was the greatest threat to our First Amendment rights, which obviously is the basis of our country. Montgomery said that the system was moved to Fort Washington, Maryland, from Reno, Nevada. From Reno, Nevada is where we would, from Nellis Air Force Base, where we would guide the drones at that time, guide the drones overseas, and get them to target who we were trying to target and take out. So that program, when it was moved to Fort Washington, was headed by Brennan and Clapper. It was used, as Montgomery said, specifically for blackmail and leverage against U.S. citizens. So they flipped it. Rather than it being safeguarded to only be used overseas, they flipped it to make sure that it was now used to gather intel on U.S. citizens. They increased the supercomputer from a $1 million supercomputer to a $5 to $6 million supercomputer, according to another gentleman that was a partner of Montgomery's. Whistleblower tapes, and that's what they're called, the whistleblower tapes, were released in 2015, where a gentleman named Tim Blixeth, who was the business partner of Montgomery, said that the Hammer had wiretapped, quote unquote, the Hammer had wiretapped Donald Trump a zillion times. Now, again, this was in 2015. The tapes were released. So I think the tapes were done years earlier, a couple years earlier than that. So they had already been wiretapping Donald Trump. Now, if that's the case, and that's true, and it's further supported later on in this article, if that's true, why would they be targeting Donald Trump? Was there rumors and know-how that he was going to run for election, and that they needed some kind of dirt on him to cover? So what Montgomery had said is that in those same tapes, so you have Blixus on the record talking to someone on these tapes, the Maricopa County, I think it was, that that Donald Trump had been wiretapped a zillion times. Montgomery separately said that a wiretap of Trump had been quote unquote ongoing for years. So again, calls into question kind of everything that's going on. If you've now seen the plot against the president, you now understand too all the mechanisms behind the push for the Russian collusion and to dig up all this dirt. Anyway, Hammer, the Project Hammer, also collected surveillance on 156 Article 3 judges, Chief Justice Roberts, Anton Scalia, the FISA court, members of Congress, and business leaders. So why would you need to collect data on those individuals? Well, if they need you to do what they need you to do, they're going to dig up this dirt. Fast forward then to the 2014 upholding of Obamacare. Fast forward to the U.S. citizenship ruling reversals that Roberts did in the 11th hour of both of those. It appeared that Roberts, if you read those opinions in the dissent, was in the camp of overthrowing the ACA and not allowing the U.S. citizenship ruling. He reversed course at the 11th hour. Why would he do that if he wasn't blackmailed? There's a famous talk, whatever, of Justice Kennedy, who supposedly excoriated aloud to where, basically everyone in the Supreme Court offices could hear him yelling at Justice Roberts that, you just created law. How could you do this? And basically, our system now ceases to exist, more or less. So anyway, if you look at, I think on page 3 of the article, which I'll refer to here, the quote that Montgomery says during a 2017 interview with his attorney, Larry Klayman, is, quote unquote, I provided to the FBI 17 businesses of Donald Trump, including the Trump Tower, the Trump leasing programs, all of these different programs, and including Trump himself, and the various family members that have been wiretapped under these programs. There's been a wiretap on Trump for years. He continues, I was a CIA contractor both under John Brennan and under James Clapper, and these individuals were running domestic surveillance programs in the United States, collecting information on Americans. They collected everything they could find, bank accounts, phone numbers, chats, emails, and they collected a massive amount of it under the Obama administration. Now, it's important to know the information that he turned over to the FBI contained 47 hard drives, and he says 600 million documents. He said it would be piled up one on top of another 30 miles high, 600 million documents. So he hinted that obviously that Roberts had been compromised as well. He also named George Tenet and Donald Kerr, who I think went on to be DNI deputy director, in his list of officials who knew what was going on. So the hammer was supposed to be off-grid and free from congressional oversight, and so Congress didn't even know about it. If you've seen some of the movies like Hacked and forget the other one that I watched not too long ago, a lot of this stuff is kept. The Shadowgate and that type of thing. As long as it's kept under wraps, then Congress may not even know what's going on, so they can't ask about it. So that's what they're good at doing. And Brennan and Clapper headed this thing up. In 2014, continuing on, a FISA court judge granted Montgomery 2 immunity agreements. So in 2015, Montgomery turned over those 47 hard drives and the $600 million of documents. He told Larry Klayman that he knew that the information was collected that he had on his drives would be used at some point on someone as leverage and blackmail, he said. He went on to be questioned for 3 hours by DOJ Assistant Attorney Deborah Curtis, which plays a key role later on, and 2 of Comey's quote-unquote right-hand men, Special Agents Walter Giardina and William Barnett. Those 2 play a key role here coming up as well, and something that we all are aware of. Now, it is interesting that all 3 of these people went on to work on Mueller's special counsel versus Trump. Montgomery said that 90% of those targeted by Mueller's team, they had info, and they had harvested that info from this Project Hammer, including Roger Stone and General Flynn. So DOJ's U.S. Attorney, Deborah Curtis, oddly obviously went on to work on the prosecution of General Flynn, Paul Manafort case, the Maria Butina case, and against the Russian nationals, which obviously later sued and cleared their name. That's interesting. So Giardina and Barnett were investigated General Flynn, and Politico reported on this in 2015 that Barnett debriefed Montgomery about illegal surveillance being conducted under the Obama administration. We know now that FBI Special Agent Joe Pientka later would say that Flynn didn't lie under oath, and yet Sidney Powell and Flynn still have not gotten that 302 of that interview. They did receive one in 302s that were provided 7 months later by, of all people, as we know now, who was anti-Trump and hated Trump, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. So if he's famous, obviously Strzok is, for saying that this is our insurance policy. So Page and Strzok knew of Montgomery, and what's interesting is that there was an interview that General Thomas McInerney did on March 19th, 2017. He went on and talked about and kind of blew open what the quote-unquote the Hammer program was. So 26 minutes after Thomas McInerney broadcast that and exposed what the Hammer was over the airwaves, is the first text message we have between Strzok and Page. So, and then that email. Or the email, I think it was, not a text, but the email. And what Strzok said was, the first one was exchanged, was cryptic, so it seemed to be coded. But the second email said, or second text message said, so I'm not going to respond to the whole group. The Klayman Montgomery stuff in the email Jim just sent us is utter BS. Best to say nothing and brief later if necessary. So again, that was 26 minutes after McInerney had exposed the program. So yeah, then Comey, then the next day on March 20th, Comey launched the Trump collusion investigation, and on that same day, right on the 20th, on the 20th, Comey also went in front of Congress and lied. He said that the FBI had no evidence to support Trump's accusation that he had been wiretapped, and despite Comey knowing that since 2015 there had been these 47 hard drives in possession of the FBI that showed that, quote-unquote, a zillion times, right, Trump had been spied on, he lied and said that he had no recognition, no knowledge of such, that Trump had been wiretapped. He also, behind closed doors, oddly, said that the FBI agents that had concluded that Flynn had not lied and did not violate the Logan Act. So while he's lying to Congress that he had no idea that any information had been gathered or stored against Trump and that he had never been wiretapped, he's also telling Congress that, in fact, Flynn had not lied and did not violate the Logan Act, according to his agents. And now James Baker comes in here. If you remember now, James Baker has seemingly turned against the previous administration and the data collection, and seems to be now working with Republicans. But it's interesting that he played a key role in this and that he laid the groundwork for Mueller opening the special counsel. He would receive the now debunked and notorious Steele dossier that Hillary Clinton paid for from David Corn at Mother Jones. David Corn is a huge Clinton lackey. He's worked for the Clinton Foundation and just does their dirty work in the media, along with several others. But so he received it from David Corn, and then he also got the same thing, or got documents from a guy named Michael Sussman, attorney Michael Sussman at Perkins Coie. Now we know Perkins Coie is linked to the DNC, and they were part of the money trail of paying Christopher Steele that they received from the DNC. So and this is shown in the plot against the president. The DNC, knowing that they needed to dig up dirt on Trump and paint him as a Russian stooge and that he colluded, the DNC paid Perkins Coie for their quote-unquote legal services. From there, they would pay out to Fusion GPS for collection of this information of the Steele dossier. Now we know that Fusion GPS, and followed the money trail, paid Christopher Steele, I think it was $156,000, and paid Nellie Orr, I think it was $10,000. Now, what's interesting about Nellie Orr is that she is the wife of U.S. Attorney Bruce Orr. Now, Bruce Orr also, I think, worked on the Mueller investigation, and that's a very, very nefarious issue and connection there. The Wall Street Journal reported in 2019 that Orr, quote unquote, had some type of relationship with Steele, and through that mechanism, information flowed to the FBI. Baker even went on to say his longtime friend David Corn fed the FBI the dossier, and that disinformation fed directly to the FBI by 4 very corrupt people, which was Steele, Glenn Simpson at Fusion GPS, David Corn at Mother Jones, and Michael Sussman at Perkins Coie, that it was meant to create the frenzy. So if you remember what Nancy Pelosi said probably a year or 2 years ago, she is a famous, it's on video, she discusses what's called the wrap-up smear. And she said the wrap-up smear is where the information is fed from the deep state or someone in Congress, like an Adam Schiff, to someone in the media. That media hack writes up an article, gets it approved by the deep state. They approve it. It then goes out to the presses, right? It goes out to the mainstream media. The mainstream media now creates the narrative, right? Brainwashes the people, manipulates them. This is fact, it's breaking news, and this is unnamed sources and everything else. So now you're forming opinion. Now that goes back to the deep state. Now the deep state can say, oh my gosh, look what happened. This guy got this breaking story. Now we can go and investigate. And that's exactly what happened here. And she called it. Nancy Pelosi called it. That's what's called the wrap-up smear. So keep that in mind now as you see news stories break. And you can go back and connect the puzzle together now, or the dots, and put the puzzle together, that this is what's been happening for years and years now, is an unnamed source releases a story. Well, that story was released because the deep state gave it to them to run, so that now when that CNN or Mother Jones or Politico article runs, they can then say, oh, based on this information, we're going to open up an investigation. The people of America say, well, since CNN or whoever ran it, then it's got to be true. So yes, we back you and support you in this. They don't understand the games that are played. So opening up your mind to that and allowing for critical thinking will go a long way in understanding how the plot against the president happened. Anyway, continuing on. So the media does the deep state manipulation, and at the hands of the media, they do it by brainwashing and doing this wrap-up smear, and it is exactly how it played out in this situation. So Baker, he amended his testimony after he lied to Congress. And remember, Roger Stone and Michael Flynn, right? Roger Stone had 17 SWAT vehicles show up at his house, 2 amphibious because he lived on water. 2 amphibious vehicles showed up at his house, and myriad of special agents to raid his house at 6 o'clock in the morning. Ironically, 14 minutes before the raid happened, the CNN van showed up. He's got it on security video, so it's all there. It's public record. Everybody knows it. So Baker changes his testimony after lying to Congress and admitted that the U.S. government did indeed unlawfully surveil Americans. So it's worth noting also, going back to James Comey and his decrepit, devious, evil acts that he is all about. He told the New York Magazine, and it's linked in this article back in 2003, that I, quote unquote, I'd moved from communist to whatever I am now. So the Hammer program is in effect a KGB style program. It's used to spy on American citizens, collect their data, get ready for blackmail and leverage, also against, like we know, according to this, Justice Roberts, FISA court judges, congressional members, that type of thing. So two NSA whistleblowers who later came out testified in June of 2019 that they, quote unquote, saw nothing questionable or anything that would indict Montgomery. The documents exist. When you deny that these documents exist in platforms, when you deny these platforms exist, you deny that Brennan and Clapper are doing, and you deny what Clapper and Brennan are doing, then you also bypass the U.S. Constitution. These people will do anything in their power to silence anyone. What kind of people do that? Going forward now, this Kevin Schiff, who is a whistleblower, CIA whistleblower, he's notorious now for claiming that a lot of the stuff that you're seeing was his doing, and that the deep state exists, but it's much bigger than it is. But he's doing everything he can now to demean and discredit the 17th letter of the alphabet, and he's been trying to prove that he's the guy that's revealed all of this stuff. He's as corrupt, and this article goes into showing that he tried to lie and manipulate, and Montgomery called him out. Or I'm sorry, another guy, starts with a B, I forget his name, but he called him out in an email and just basically said, dude, you've lost it. So you're watching all this transpire, and that wraps up this section here. But you're seeing all this stuff transpire. Now put yourself into today with Scorecard. So they've gathered all this information. Now they have the blackmail on everybody. They go into these precincts. They go into these voting locations. You're already seeing today red districts in western Pennsylvania and in Philadelphia. That's a red district. Voting machines are shutting down. Here in Georgia, Spalding County, right at the open, machines were down. In Brooklyn, New York, there's a guy running for Congress there who's a black conservative. He showed up at his polling booth. He's got it on video showing that the woman is saying, oh, I'm sorry, that we're only down to one machine that you can vote on now. Of course, there's a line outside wrapped around the block. So they're doing everything they can right now to steal the election. So what they need to do is they need to suppress, and it always comes out that Republicans suppress votes. Republicans and the governors and the secretaries of state purge voter rolls the way they're supposed to be purged. Here in Georgia, Brian Kemp was upheld in court by saying, yep, you did what you were supposed to do. You gave people ample evidence of their address and ample time to submit and say, yes, I'm still at that address, here's my name, whatever, and verify who you are, or you got purged. We've seen now, I think there's 352 counties where there's more than 100% of people in that county registered to vote. So you're seeing, and it's over 8 states, I believe it was. So you're seeing this take place. Now, if they can suppress enough vote and keep enough people from voting, then their mechanism of this Project Scorecard it makes all the more sense in the world. They can, take off about 3% of the votes and shift them to who they want to, and they're going to shift them to Biden. So McInerney was great at sounding the alarm on this. Now, some of my insiders have said, and sources I get information from have said that Trump and the DOJ is already in control of this. They already knew about it. 17th letter had sent out something back in 2018, I believe, talking about Hammer, and it was all capitalized that it's in control, it's under control now. So again, this could all be for naught and could be, just a cover for something else. But I hold McInerney at a deepest trust in what he's done for America. Now, the people who, and I've already been in discussions with some people, are like, he tried to smear John McCain and all this other stuff, and he can't be trusted. But these are the same people that trust Lieutenant Colonel Vindman on the whistleblower of Donald Trump and the Russia collusion thing, and he even admitted, Vindman, that he doctored the testimony. So he's already shown himself to be discredited and lied, but McInerney has not. So I trust McInerney. I trust what he's saying. So if this is happening, it is going to be monumental in its scope, and I'm hoping that AG Barr and I'm hoping that the FEC are all over this today and understanding and in control of how this vote transfer is going to happen. So Sidney Powell is saying that she's going to be in Pennsylvania, I think, or have people in Pennsylvania. You've already seen one poll watcher that's a Trump poll watcher in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia today, try to get into a poll and was not allowed to. The two African-American poll watchers for the Democrats, or precinct people, were standing outside the door saying, sorry, you can't come in. That certificate is not for this district or for this division. So there's already all kinds of stuff going on. This is the only way that Democrats can win an election. They have to steal the vote. You're seeing the red wave out there, all the momentum again. Go social media, search for all the parades that happened this week. There was, I'll name a few, 96-mile caravan in Pima, Arizona, a 20-minute car caravan in Central Illinois, 3 miles of cars in Connecticut, a 6-hour backup on the Garden State Highway in New Jersey. Jews for Trump took over the Cuomo Bridge. I think it was a 3-hour delay, but supposedly went on for 50 miles. Thousands were gathered alongside of San Diego coastline along the shore while a huge boat parade took place. In Beverly Hills, you had the third or fourth of a mass Trump rally. It's called the Freedom Rally that had close to 10,000 people there. They went down Rodeo Drive or Cannon, one of the roads there in Beverly Hills, and peacefully paraded through the street. So this is happening all over the place. I mean, there's other stuff in Texas. There's other stuff in Missouri. There's stuff here in Georgia. Down in South Florida, there was a 30,000 car parade and Latinos for Trump and a Trump rally. So you're seeing such mass get out the vote initiatives by the base and Latinos and now Black Americans. You're seeing some polls are showing that 27 to 31% are now supporting Trump, that the Democrats are going to do all they can to suppress the vote. You've seen the polls all tighten. And the reason for that is because independents are now breaking for Donald Trump. They're seeing that, one, Joe Biden can't speak straight for more than 2 minutes. And even then, he claims he's wearing a Philadelphia Eagles jacket, points to the emblem, and it's a Delaware Blue Hens jacket. I mean, the guy's an idiot. So if you look at the final polls, then Trafalgar has Pennsylvania going for Trump by almost 2%, 1.9. He's got Ohio at 4.8 for Trump, Michigan at 2.5 for Trump, and North Carolina at 2.1. His latest national poll came out today, and I think it was, if it wasn't 2, it was like 1.8 nationwide for Trump now. His 52% approval rating amongst Rasmussen is higher than Obama's was when he got elected, but he does have Biden, up nationally 48 to 47, where Biden was up 49 to 46 just on Friday. So you got Nate Silver now hedging his bets. 2 weeks ago, it was going to be a Biden lock. It was a landslide. He's now saying that if Biden does not win Pennsylvania, it's going to be a long night for Joe Biden. So Biden needs Pennsylvania to win. According to the Trafalgar polls and some of the key data that Steve Deace covered yesterday on his show, go to his podcast. The first probably 20, 25 minutes are phenomenal. He uses a Democrat polling group, which I've referenced on this show, called Target Smart, to basically show in Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, those 10 states, that if you're a Democrat and you're hoping that Biden is going to win and you're in the polling game, you are very worried that these polls are all moving against you into Trump's favor or already has Trump up with such a insurmountable lead that it's going to be darn near impossible for you to win. So Trump can actually lose Pennsylvania. I looked at a map yesterday because there's word that he may pick up New Hampshire. If he picks up New Hampshire early on and wins Maine District 2, which he did before, I mean, that's only 6 votes, but it's very telling of the kind of the independence. New Hampshire is known as a very independent state. So if those break for him early, then he can lose Pennsylvania. as long as he wins Michigan and Wisconsin, he's going to win Ohio, it seems. North Carolina is still suspect, even according to Steve Deace, who did polling he was the main pollster for Ted Cruz and Huckabee back in 2012. So he knows the game. And he says that these polls are very worrisome if you're a Democrat. So if Trump does lose Pennsylvania but picks up Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina, which even again Nate Silver says it's called the needle. If he picks up Georgia, Florida, and North Carolina, that it's going to be potentially a long night for Biden. So basically, he's saying that Biden needs Pennsylvania and one of those three to win. But like I said, Trump can lose Pennsylvania as long as he holds Michigan and Wisconsin, which he won before. A lot of auto workers are breaking. I think what's her name, Dingell, said yesterday that a lot of auto workers are breaking for Donald Trump. So if that state stays red, Wisconsin stays red, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida are red, Texas will be red, and if Arizona and Nevada go red, it's over for Biden. So a lot of things at play, and it'll be very interesting to see, obviously, how this plays out tonight. Personally, I'm not going to stay up late. I may make it to midnight, and then I'm going to bed because I don't think it'll be determined tonight because the media won't allow it to be. Axios did come out, of course, and say that if it looks like he can mathematically has won, he's allowed to come out and give a speech. If it's mathematically shown that Trump wins, he's not allowed to. So the media is already creating their double standard. So the great thing about this election is it seems that McInerney's back on the war room with Steve Bannon right now, so I'd be interested to see what he's going to be saying. Texas has already turned out 106% of their 2016 vote. Trump was up 10.1. In Wisconsin, Democrats were up 1.2, but it was 9.2 this time in 2016. Trump went on to win Wisconsin when it was a 9.2 lead by 0.7. In Pennsylvania, of course, you're seeing all the shenanigans going on right now, but only 40% of that state has voted. Now, in defense of Democrats, they were shown to be up 32.8 points in early voting, but 60% of the electorate remain, and that's what swung him in 2016 to win. Now, granted, the GOP was up about 8 points in 2016 in Pennsylvania, but if the early polling is any indication, we all know that the Democrats were pushing to get their voters out early. We do know that Black Americans typically go to the polls on Election Day. They're not trusting of the mail system, and this has been discussed by Democrat and Republican pollsters and poll watchers in the past. So it'd be very interesting to see what plays out there. A couple good things that, staying on the polls, the Trump rally last night in Kenosha, Wisconsin had 16,682 people sign up for it, according to Ronna McDaniel, the head of the GOP. Of that, 51% were not registered Republicans. 44.9% still had not voted. Again, this is in Wisconsin, but Kenosha, so it's probably Wisconsin, maybe some Illinois as well, and Iowa. So what you're interesting there is that if these 45% that hadn't voted were showing up at a Trump rally, most likely those 45% are going to go vote today. But 25.4% of those did not vote in 2016. Now, what we've seen across the board at these Trump rallies, if Ronna McDaniel is not lying, right, let's say she's off by 20%, right, just throw that number out. What you're seeing a lot of people showing up at these rallies who are first-time voters. I think it was the average was like 18%. So discount that by 20%, right? You're down to 15. So if 15% are first-time voters and they're showing up for Trump rallies, then that's a very good sign for Trump. If 45% still hadn't voted in Wisconsin and they're showing up at a rally, that's a very good sign for Trump for Wisconsin. If 51% are showing up that aren't registered Republicans, again, an even bigger catalyst for a Trump win there. And you're seeing this across the board in the Pennsylvania rallies, North Carolina rally, and the Gaston, and you're seeing his YouTube views of his rallies. He just set a record here in Rome, Georgia. 177,000 people watched on YouTube his rally because the media wasn't covering it, right? I think Fox may have covered it for a minute or whatever while Hannity was on, but he went down to Opelika, Florida at midnight and had another, I think, 18,000 people or something show up for that event. So you're seeing such a mass overtaking of what they're calling the red wave. The media is trying to spin it now as the red mirage. What you're you're going to be shown tonight is a red mirage, that all these states that go for Trump is a lie. You got to wait for all these ballots to come in. And sure enough, it's Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, I think North Carolina, and one other major critical battleground state. The courts there have allowed for all kinds of shenanigans to take place. So they're in on the buy-in as well. You can call me a conspiracy theorist. I don't really care. I connect dots. I look at past history and then use information like McInerney talks about here to understand where everything's going. You saw Michigan Governor Whitmer. She came out and threatened business owners in her state with 6 months of jail time if they don't adhere to a contact tracing. I mean, that's tyranny. You don't even need a definition of what tyranny is. Just know that that's not right. You had the Pennsylvania district attorney. He tweeted out yesterday. He's already predetermined the outcome of the election. It's like, how do you know? I mean, again, you're in on the game, right? You're in on the books cooking. You're going to cook the books. There's a video of federal workers, a Zoom call that's been released that goes into how they're going to siege the White House and take over the White House. And it's November 4th it starts, and then tonight it starts at 4 p.m. And then on November 5th they bring in a whole other reinforcements, and then the chaos begins. So, and then Fauci, God bless him, Fauci came out yesterday and said, yes, absolutely, mandates and lockdowns are 100% on the table and should strongly be considered. He didn't say that verbatim, but he was essentially saying that if you're a state, you can't make up your own rules. You have to go by what we tell you. So, and he's come out now and openly endorsed Joe Biden. So there's been this tiff going on between Trump and Biden. Now you're understanding why. So it's nefarious at best. Between Trump and Fauci. So you're seeing this nefarious act taking place, and it's a harbinger of corruption. And as McInerney said yesterday in his conversation with Steve Bannon, that one choice in this election, one choice is for freedom, one choice is for communism. If Biden wins, America will never have another free and fair election. That's his words, not mine. So now as you look at what we have to go for here in this vote in 2020, I want to give you side to side. On one side, you have BLM and Antifa riots. On the other side, you have people wanting to gather for church. On one side, you have people supporting Chaz and Chop. On the other side, you have people supporting Sean Fite and his faith rallies across the country. On one side, you have Antifa flags. The other side, American flags. One side, you have critical race theory. The other side, you have love my neighbor. One side, you have supporters of Christina Blasey Ford. On one side, you have supporters of Amy Coney Barrett. On one side, you have Wall Street. On one side, you have Main Street. One side, you have Hollywood support. On one side, you have Holly Springs support. On one side, you have a mob family support. On the other side, you have supporters of a nuclear family. On one side, you have nihilism. Other side, you have optimism. One side, you have cynicism. The other, idealism. Marxism versus nationalism. Communism versus capitalism. On one side, you have John Legend. The other side, you have Ice Cube. One side, you have George Floyd. The other, Pat Tillman. One side, you have Jacob Blake. The other side, Madison Cawthorn. One side, Hunter Biden. The other side, Ivanka Trump. On one side, you have support of lockdowns. The other side wants to open up. On one side, they support masks and shaming those who don't wear them. On the other side, it is freedom, and you can make up your own choice as to if you want to wear one. On one side is Karl Marx America. The other side is a Tim Scott America. On one side, you have children of darkness, and on the other side, you have the children of light. This election comes down, people, to it's good versus evil. It's a spiritual war that we are in. And as McInerney said, that if this election goes the way of Biden, we will never have another free and fair election. So choose wisely, go out and vote to keep us free, and God bless, and go vote. Thank you.